Welcome and thank you for joining us today for 5 managed SD-WAN trends to watch in 2023. My name is Raleigh Gould and I'll be moderating today's event. Our featured speakers are Seamus McGillicuddy, VP of Research covering Network Management at EMA, Spencer Rolbs, Product Marketing Manager at Juniper Networks, and Jeff Lee, Senior Director of Risk, Governance, Projects, and Partners at ConnX. Seamus has more than 16 years of experience in the IT industry as an industry analyst and journalist. His research focuses on all aspects of managing enterprise networks. Spencer specializes in the AI-driven enterprise product portfolio with a strong emphasis on Juniper's full stack and AI-driven SD-WAN. With extensive expertise in the technology industry, Spencer successfully developed and executed effective marketing campaigns, positioning Juniper's SD-WAN offering as a leading solution in the market. And since joining ConnX in 2012, Jeff has guided ConnX in productizing and executing on executive vision and service delivery, client and partner experience, process, and marketing. This experience has put Jeff at the forefront of communications transformation for some of the largest global enterprises. And before I hand things over to today's featured speakers, I wanted the audience to know that they will be concluding today's presentation by taking your questions. Feel free to log them anytime by using the Q&A functionality. Also, today's event is being recorded and you will receive a follow-up email from EMA with the on-demand playback as well as additional resources. So be sure to check that email out. And now I'd like to go ahead and turn things over to our first featured speaker, Seamus McGillicuddy. Seamus.
Thank you, Raleigh, and thank you everyone for joining us today. As Raleigh mentioned, I'm the Vice President of Research at Enterprise Management Associates. Every 2 years, I survey hundreds of enterprises about their WAN, their wide area network strategies, to find out what's happening with SD-WAN, SASE, and so forth. One thing that we've seen over the years is a shift, a continuing shift towards consuming software-defined wide area networking as a managed service rather than a DIY project where your own network engineering team comes in and selects, buys the product, implements it, builds the tunnels, etc., and then operates it independently without a managed service provider involved. So as you can see on the left of this chart, the number of companies that prefer to consume SD-WAN as a managed service has ticked up from 62% to 66% over the last 2 or 3 years. It was closer to 50% before that, if I recall correctly, last time I looked at it in 2018. What you're also seeing here is the number of people who haven't really decided on how they're going to approach an SD-WAN implementation has shrunk. And you've seen a slight uptick in people who are, it's probably not slight, but doubling, those who are going with a DIY approach. But what you're seeing here is most people are pretty locked in with a vision of consuming SD-WAN as a managed service moving forward, and a minority of the people who are doing DIY. We at EMA have seen in our research that consuming SD-WAN as a managed service is emerging as a best practice. People who consume it as a managed service reported to us both in 2020 and in 2023 that they are feeling more successful overall with their SD-WAN implementation versus those who pursued a DIY approach. DIY projects can be successful if the reason why they went with it was the strength of their own internal network engineering team. But we're seeing that that's what our data showed, is like if they told us the reason for a DIY approach was we had a really good network engineering team, we felt they could do it, then they were more likely to say they're successful. But if it was something like security concerns or culture or something like that, or cost, they tended to fail more often. And one of the things to keep in mind is most people are struggling to put together a fully staffed network engineering team these days. Most enterprises in my research in recent years have told us they're really struggling to hire and retain highly skilled engineers, the people who would be tasked with doing this. And those people are also very busy just responding to tier 3 support tickets and so forth as well. So you can't really afford to let them work on projects like this when a managed service offering is there waiting for them to consume it. We also found there's a preference for smaller companies for managed service SD-WAN as well, which makes sense. They tend to have more IT generalists on staff that are not up to the task. But still, even those larger enterprises that have 5,000 or more people are more likely to go with a managed service than a DIY approach. Why do they select a managed SD-WAN path? The number one thing they told us was it allows them to get like an SLA, network assurance. They work with an MSP who guarantees a certain level of availability or performance. There may be some complexity under that with the underlay, but they basically get one throat to choke and an expected level of service that they can, at least point to when they're having problems and get resolutions quickly. They're also seeing it as an opportunity to integrate with other managed services. So if they have an MSP that offers a lot of security, like network security offerings, cloud interconnect services, things like that, that's also an opportunity, which makes a lot of sense also if you're thinking about your journey from software-defined WAN to secure access service edge, which is, the evolution of SD-WAN to include cloud-delivered network security and secure remote access, things like that. It offers a better path towards that if you can integrate with your MSP's offerings in those areas. They also see it as an opportunity to pursue cost savings, like OpEx instead of CapEx, for instance, maybe less short-term investment. They also tell us, it's just complex to implement an SD-WAN solution. Provisioning all the tunnels, configuring all the policies for quality of service and security and so forth can be really difficult. And that's like anecdotally one that comes up a lot. And then they have existing relationships with service providers, like whether it's like a telecommunications service provider or an MSP, and it just makes sense for them to move in that direction. When you go with a managed service, it kind of opens up opportunities for you to do more advanced technology implementations. For instance, people who told us that they have a managed SD-WAN were more likely to tell us that they're operating that as a full mesh as opposed to like a hub and spoke network. So it's easier for them to provision all those tunnels into a full mesh network where you have any-to-any connectivity, and you can a site can connect to the best cloud or whatnot, to get optimal performance and quick failover across multiple paths. They also told us that they are better able to integrate their SD-WAN solutions with other services like unified communications as a service, managed NOC services, and security services. Like they just have better experiences with those kinds of integrations when they're consuming it as a managed service. So that's one thing to know about managed SD-WAN, as the title of this webinar promised. Here's one insider's perspective on the managed option. I talk to dozens of people a month about what they're doing with their networks, and in a conversation about their SD-WAN solution, this VP of architecture at a $5 billion energy company, more specifically fossil fuel and chemical company, he said he told me that he was telling upper management that DIY just wasn't an approach for SD-WAN because they had many sites, and he did not have the right headcount in terms of like network engineering resources, and did not have enough CapEx to buy the hardware for a DIY SD-WAN solution based on what vendors they were looking at. It would have, he said he would have had to hire at least 10 new people and put together a CapEx budget of $3 million for a DIY approach, and he just wasn't in a position to do that. So that's an example of a person who, had skills gaps, budget issues, in complexity. Managed SD-WAN also eases the transition to secure access service edge that I mentioned before. A lot of people are having difficulty with this transition. You see on the left here, do you think it's difficult or easy to advance from an SD-WAN solution platform to adopting a fully integrated SASE solution? Only 10.9%, nearly 11% described it as very easy. So that means that almost 26% said somewhat easy, meaning they know they're going to have a little bit of a headache doing it. It's not going to be a cakewalk. And then you see well over 30% saying it's genuinely painful. Consumers of managed SD-WAN services told us that that transition is easier, whereas people who consume SD-WAN as a DIY solution were describing it, were more likely to say it's difficult, very difficult, or somewhat difficult. There are a variety of reasons why it's painful, but one thing to keep in mind is a unified SASE solution where the SD-WAN piece and the secure service edge piece, the cloud delivered security capabilities, are provided by a single solution provider. They reported less pain with this transition. So that means you work with the managed service provider for the SD-WAN capability and also the cloud delivered network security capabilities. They deliver you a unified managed service, less pain. So how do you succeed with managed SD-WAN? Well, thing to know number 2, identify the critical SD-WAN capabilities that are going to be important to you. Your peers are telling us that hybrid connectivity is important. So the ability to support multiple simultaneous connections at a site and perhaps steer traffic across those different connections. Integrated network security, which is especially important to the largest companies in our research. That harkens back to the SASE piece we've been touching on throughout. Native observability, the ability to monitor from the central console of the SD-WAN solution. Now, managed service provider is going to be managing that for you most likely, but you may want to share that console with them so you can see what's going on as well. We'll get into that in a little bit. Automated site-to-site connectivity, the ability to just automatically connect one site to another without having to set up a tunnel manually, for instance. And you also want to think about how you're going to maximize performance when you implement this. The top 2 WAN application performance issues we're seeing are bandwidth limitations and latency. You need a solution that can attack both of those problems. So think about that. Like, is there an acceleration capability? Is there some sort of mitigation towards the overhead that the overlay puts on your network that can reduce the amount of bandwidth that you need? SD-WAN connectivity solutions should minimize overhead of overlay tunnels and route traffic as efficiently as possible. That's what we're seeing. Thing to know number 3, don't let yourself get stuck in this bizarre world of multi-vendor SD-WAN. 43% of the companies I surveyed this year told me that they had at least 2 vendors for SD-WAN, which is shockingly high, but not completely surprising, because it's a pretty mature market at this point, and a lot of people have been using SD-WAN for a long time, which means a lot of things happen to introduce vendor complexity. The drivers of multi-vendor, I mean, the first 2 are actually more business related, requirements related, like, 59% said we had product requirements forced us to get a second vendor. Like, we had a lot of sites that we needed to connect via 5G, and our incumbent vendor didn't do that, so we added a second vendor to our environment. Or site diversity. We have 2 different types of sites that kind of need very different things, like retail, factory. It didn't work to have the same vendor for both. Independent business units. I talked to one person recently who told me that his company operates in such a way that, like, North America does one thing and rest of the world does the other, and they elected to go with different SD-WAN vendors, and then he was responsible for both of them. And then mergers and acquisitions. Companies getting bought and sold every day, and they come with their own SD-WAN vendor, and you're not going to get rid of it overnight, that's for sure. And you may not be able to get rid of it. And finally, 21% said it's just a gradual vendor migration. We're going to spend the next year migrating to a new vendor, and in the meantime, there'll be this shrinking sphere of sites that are on legacy vendor. In the meantime, we're managing both. That's a painful situation to be in. In our research, people who told us they're multi-vendor are less likely to feel successful with their SD-WAN efforts. And the things that were most painfully associated with that were inconsistent security. Can't have this. We don't have a unified security architecture across the multiple vendors. We can't manage policy consistently in both of those vendors. Skills gaps across vendors. Like, I got one guy that knows one vendor really well. He doesn't really know the other. And then cost, just bubbling up. Two vendors. Just leads to more license costs. Some there might be like front end costs that pile on top of each other. Thing to know, number 4, yes, managed SD-WAN is the clear preference for the enterprise world at this point, but they also don't want to completely outsource operations, day 2 operations. They see a world where they want a hybridized approach to operations, where they can share responsibility with their managed service provider. You see here, even though 63% told us that they prefer a managed SD-WAN approach, 58% want a hybrid operating model. Only 25% outsource it completely to a managed service provider. And hybrid ops correlates with more successful SD-WAN implementations in our research. So example of this is I was talking to somebody recently who worked with a managed service provider to operate his global SD-WAN. Well, actually, he was working with 8 MSPs and 1 SD-WAN vendor because he had so many sites in so many places in the world that he couldn't find a single MSP that handled all of it. But anyway, he used a third-party network monitoring vendor to monitor all of it from the outside in, because a lot of times, like, you'd have a factory that go offline in Brazil or something, and he would detect it before his MSP, because the people in the factory would call and complain to him, and then he would use his tool to confirm that the site was up, but like some sort of routing issue had affected application performance. So he was able to go to the managed service provider and be like, "Hey, I see this. Can you help me work it out?" Tooling for hybrid ops, 73% of organizations told us that they're monitoring their SD-WAN environments with a third-party tool. They often have difficulty with it. There's a lot of dissatisfaction with the visibility they're getting out of third-party tools, because those tools often have to integrate with multiple SD-WAN vendors to deal with the idiosyncratic ways that some of them deal with data and present that data. And you see here, 42% of them told us they're struggling with the fact that they don't have an end-to-end insights available across the SD-WAN overlay that's built by your SD-WAN vendor and the WAN underlay. Chances are a managed service provider help you address those issues. Many of them also complained of poor reporting and visualization into SD-WAN tunnels with those third-party tools, and then encountering data quality, data format issues. Some vendors are a little immature in how they handle data that they export to you, so that can be an issue as well. An MSP might actually be able to mitigate that issue for you by doing the work there to get the data in the correct format for your tools. We also found that when you're adopting a third-party tool for monitoring SD-WAN, you really want to make sure you can get an end-to-end view of your WAN underlay. When you can establish that in a single console, you're going to have a much better time with SD-WAN operations. So keep that in mind. And finally, you need to embrace AI-driven network operations. 51% of users of AI-driven networking solutions. This is research where we surveyed hundreds of people who have experience with applying AI, ML, AI ops technology to network management. 51% said it's especially valuable for improving WAN operations, specifically SD-WAN. And 69% of them told us that since they've started applying AI technology to network management, they've seen overall end user experience on their networks get better. the top benefits they told us about, it helps them optimize their networks more efficiently. They feel more agile with their network, can respond to changing needs of the business or business events. Overall, better security and compliance. They're able to identify security issues more quickly and identify violations of network policy quickly. And their networks are just more resilient. They don't go down. And OpEx, people are spending less time on manual tasks, troubleshooting, things like that, because AI has optimized all of that. So that's what we're seeing. That's, by the way, thing to know, number 5. Look for an AI-driven solution when you're doing SD-WAN, or managed or otherwise. So with that, I'm going to hand it to Jeff at ConnX for his perspective on all this, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Seamus, for those interesting insights and research. As Raleigh and Seamus mentioned, I'm Jeff Lee, a Senior Director here at ConnX, which is an MSP, and here to provide our perspective as an MSP on the managed SD-WAN trends. I have a interesting position in my company in the sense that I get an overall view of both our clients and the internal workings of our company. So have some interesting insights into all of this. I'm very excited to be here, and I'm happy to have been invited to talk about what has become a really critical technology here in the modern world. So here to shed some light on what we see from an MSP perspective on the managed SD-WAN trends that Seamus talked about, and also to share how we leverage Juniper to help service our clients. Next slide, please. So wanted to pull back from all the research that Seamus and EMA provided and really think about, why do people need an MSP? So I'm going to start with this. This is, a typical simplified example of a enterprise client network that we have, right? So immediately, right away, you see, even at a simplified level, the complexity. The complexity is very apparent. Modern voice communications, collaboration, and security assurance at an enterprise scale is incredibly complex. It's compounded by scarce in-house human resources, like Seamus mentioned, and lack of expertise in-house, right? So integrations across devices, networks, software, and data centers, SaaS cloud applications, you have private cloud, retail branch offices, work from home. All of these things you can see in this diagram, and it becomes very complex and fragmented, and you don't get a single pane of glass view, and all these silos work against you as an enterprise to try and get this stuff working. And then you still need to add things like global reach, which even major service integrators like AT&T or other people don't necessarily provide. So which is why we show things like the satellite hubs and LTE 5G backup, right? So we provide that kind of glue between what the shortcomings and the items that Seamus and EMA find, and glue it together with vendors like Juniper to really provide a overall easy way to become start on your journey down for SD-WAN. We rarely find also that people just go out to buy SD-WAN on its own. We really find that people are looking for it to be integrated into a broader communications and collaborations platform that is more and more reliant on AI ML engines. So that's really why we find where we find a lot of value for us. Next slide, please. So all this complexity that you just saw really ties into why enterprises are embracing managed SD-WAN, which is really the first finding that Seamus and EMA talked about, sort of things to know, number 1, right? MSPs like ConnX really ease the digital transformation journey by providing, network assurance, one throat to choke for network assurance, which EMA found was the most important driver of preference for managed SD-WAN. The idea that you get 24/7 proactive end-to-end client-to-cloud network security and application monitoring, fault detection, remediation with built-in security means that you don't have to worry about it. You really offload that, and you don't need to have the people in-house to deal with all of that either. So in terms of better integrations, which is number 2 that Seamus talked about in terms of things to know, number 1, there's a better integration of best-of-breed solutions and managed services, which is vital as a cost efficiency because we constantly evaluate what best-of-breed means and really provide upgrades to our services without negating our clients' capital investments. So for people, it's not just about integration, but also the cost savings from having to do these upgrades on your own, both in human capital and as a CapEx kind of investment. And lastly, I'm not going to go through all of the items that Seamus found in item number 1, but resolving complexity of deployment, really provisioning tunnels, configuring all these things. The complexity, we managed to have been in business for over 30 years, and with that intellectual capital that we have, we merge that with our AI-driven innovation to help de-risk migrations. And really, you provide that with rapid digital deployment, optimization, and deployment. So this is really where MSPs like ConnX really provide better assurance, integration, cost savings, and reduce the complexity, and very much address exactly what Seamus was talking about in terms of why enterprises are embracing managed SD-WAN. Next slide, please. So again, let's just kind of reframing this conversation a little bit as to why are enterprises also embracing managed SD-WAN. It's because the world has really changed. Before, you had offices with defined network boundaries, and now you have work from anywhere with significant portion of the workforce outside those boundaries, but they still demand the same in-office, in-network experience, and obviously you want that same level of security. These kind of legacy on-premise voice systems experience lack of integration with siloed platforms, dispersed users from the rise of remote work, and more of these applications are moving into the cloud. And all of that really causes a loss of visibility and control for performance and security, as well as poor user experience and operational efficiencies, and a dependency on reactive understanding of network issues. So you're always behind in these this older paradigm. And that's really where a MSP like ConnX can help. With a multi-service ConnX global communications platform that is powered by Juniper SD-WAN, enterprises can provide the same level of service and the same user experience across the globe to every user behind, whether they're in a home office or whether they're behind network boundaries. An MSP like ConnX really leverages vendors like Juniper's to address capabilities that EMA found critical, which is the second item that Seamus really brought up. We simplify hybrid enterprise connectivity, collaboration, and contact centers, which is really a priority for the things that are critical, and service assurance. And we go beyond integrating security to having it built right in, and Juniper is definitely part of that. Our systems are also, with the assistance of vendors like Juniper, address bandwidth issues, latency, and provide a tunnel-less connectivity. And really that has been a huge, important factor in the success of our product. In terms of priorities for things that are critical, the second thing that Seamus talked about, ConnX leverages AI ops to provide more than just observability by collecting, illuminating, and predicting powerful business insights using AI-powered analytics and conversational AI. That really drives proactive end-to-end client-to-cloud visibility with control and great experiences for clients and users alike, while lowering IT costs. And all of those things really help drive the need for MSPs and why people are really looking at us with great interest all the time. Next slide, please. So given that evolving landscape from the bordered enterprise to the new landscape of the borderless enterprise, it's really not surprising that Seamus and EMA found most enterprises have more than 2 vendors, right? Like you try and plug holes as you go, and you build up this kind of like legion of people that are going to do different things. And they're looking to consolidate. It's one of those things that, like Seamus says, is things to know number 3, people are really looking to make things simpler, lower that complexity. And an MSP can provide integration for client, whether multi-vendor approach is a requirement, whether it's for site diversity, both of which are things that Seamus mentioned, and whether it's, and sometimes this comes up through mergers and acquisitions or different business units having their own ideas of what's happening. So we've leveraged our intellectual capital to provide an integrate to migrate approach that really balances rapid deployment without loss of continuity. And that's really been very critical for a lot of the clients that we've seen, being able to adopt SD-WAN without having to worry about, like, whether we're going to do a hard cutover, because that's just really too hard. And with levels of complexity nowadays, that's a little much. Seamus mentioned that about 63% of managed SD-WAN clients prefer hybrid ops as part of things to know number 4. And we found that that's largely true, but we also found that that's mostly true with our enterprise clients who want to maintain command and control. One of the powerful things that ConnX has managed to do by leveraging Juniper is providing a platform so that this can be provided as a service to smaller businesses who have this need for value, where that is more key, and they don't really have the resources for a hybrid operation. They don't have the in-house operational people to take care of this stuff. And I think that's represented by like the 26 or so % that Seamus mentioned that our clients have really fully outsourced. And I really think that, as an MSP, I really see that as something that we expect to continue to grow as these kind of services become more accessible and more in demand. Lastly, EMA also found that AI-driven network operations were key. That's his item number 5. We at ConnX couldn't agree more about that. We really find that that's a key thing. A perfect example is the national automotive retailer use case that Spencer will go into more deeply in a few minutes. ConnX helped develop the capabilities that Juniper eventually acquired. And together with Juniper, we launched that retailer to 11% growth during the pandemic when everybody was really shrinking and worried. It was provisioned faster than the client was able to consume, bringing their stores online. Really, it's really kind of amazing because, we brought a project online that was supposed to take, when the client looked at it, said, well, maybe 3 years. And we did it in 8 months. And we could have done it faster if the client had been able to really consume more of their stores online. In addition, ConnX leveraged AI to really digest really 3 million or more alerts across the national network of over 5,000 stores and nearly 40,000 devices on a daily basis to really make that consumable on a daily basis to discern what are the alerts and what are the things that are really actionable. The last slide, please. To wrap up, can I get the next slide, please? I guess we're not able to do that, so hold on. I'll start talking about it. To wrap up, basically, before I pass this over to Spencer, we want to talk more about Juniper. I wanted to leave the audience with a bit of an idea of what to look for in an MSP. The field is crowded, and not all MSPs are created equally, quite honestly. So, we talk about the things that we do that are important to look for is, service assurance, obviously, to be able to provide that proactive and continuous testing has been a great value. We provide the intellectual capital, make sure that your MSP really has that history of knowing what they're doing and is not a new player to this, because that intellectual capital really plays a large part in being successful. Integrations and simplification. You're hiring an MSP to try and really make this stuff easier, not more difficult. So your MSP needs to be able to take all these various components and really mush them together and present you with a much simpler view and much more easy to digest. And that goes along with flexible engagement, so people can really have something that's tailored to their needs, right? And the option to really fully own hardware or software, or go with a fully OpEx solution. Lastly, AI ops and automation, like Seamus talked about. If your MSP is not AI ops and leveraging AI, there's just too many things happening nowadays to not leverage AI to be able to provide a good system for an MSP. With that, I'm about to present this, bring this over to Spencer, but I'm going to give us a quick plug. As ConnX, we were just presented a few days ago as TMC's 2023 Internet Telephony Network as a Service Product of the Year Award, specifically for AI-powered SD-WAN. So, if you need a great MSP, we're happy to talk to you guys. Spencer?
All right. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Seamus. From here, I just want to reintroduce myself. My name is Spencer Rolfs. I'm with Juniper Networks on our AIDE. So this is our AI-driven enterprise, primarily focusing on our SD-WAN offering, but overall really honing in on this AI ops concept. So Seamus talked about it on his 5th trend, that's where a lot of these networks are moving towards. And Jeff painted a great picture of how MSPs can help you directly implement that into your operations as well. So my role, and kind of to bring us home in this presentation, is going to just talk about the differentiators that Juniper can provide through our solutions. And then to get your kind of creative juices flowing, give 3 examples of customer use cases where we were able to help these customers solve some problems that they had. And hopefully this can address some of your problems as well. I'll just reiterate too, at the end of this, we're going to have a Q&A session. We're all open books, happy to answer any questions you may have. So I'll go ahead and kick off. Next slide. All right. So for Juniper's AI-driven enterprise, this is our full stack offering, right? And all of this is underpinned with our AI operations. And this is where a lot of trends are heading towards nowadays. And obviously, we're hearing a lot about AI just all over the news in general. But the general concept that you can kind of take away from that is the longer you're in the space, the more robust your data set is, the better your AI outcomes are going to be in the long run. That benefits Juniper tremendously. We were the first to bring AI ops to the network. And so we get to kind of talk about some of those in the use cases today. But to really give the key differentiators, we're going to start with our client level visibility. So what that looks like is, I'm going to give an example of going to a coffee shop. If a customer walks in and they connect to your network, that immediate client visibility is shown up on your platform. And a number of things can go wrong from that point forward, but the Mist cloud through Juniper Networks is tracking that client in real time, providing understanding and a better visibility as to what exactly is happening. This creates a lot of data points. Obviously, this is where the AI ops comes into play. So that's going to be our second point. AI-driven operations and support. As that data is coming through our network, we get real-time updates on what exactly is happening. So if a problem arises, maybe there's a packet capture that's going wrong, we can do an automated root cause analysis to figure out what that is and address these problems as they arise. All the way down to that client level visibility. That's a really unique differentiator for Juniper's approach to AI ops. We're using this across our full stack platform. So this is our wired, wireless, WAN, and our cloud data set. And all of this comes together through our modern microservices cloud. So we're bringing agility back to the microservices cloud. And this means there's going to be less downtime for you and your operations while you're trying to implement new updates or just running your regular operations. And then lastly, which is kind of a unique differentiator for Juniper, it's separate from the full stack, but I think it's a really great use case that you as a business or you as an enterprise can implement in many creative ways. So go back to that coffee analogy. If somebody connects to your network, we have a digital engagement tool through our virtual Bluetooth. We can identify that user has been at your coffee shop before, and let's say they haven't been in a few weeks. You can send out push notifications to let them know, like, hey, we miss you. Here's a 10% off the next time you come back. So we're going to see a number of these examples in these use cases, but I just wanted to highlight the key differentiators for now. So go ahead and next slide. So our first use case is a great example, and this is actually a joint venture with ConnX. So there was a auto parts retailer on a nationwide scale. There was over 5,000 stores with this company. And what they were experiencing was a lot of poor voice quality. So drop calls, and really it was the link quality degradation that they were experiencing. experiencing, and they needed help solving this problem. So they started shopping around, and it was actually ConnX that came up with this idea that using the Juniper SD-WAN tunnel-free technology would prevent a lot of this failover from happening and losing these dropped calls. You can imagine in this type of service at a retail chain, a phone call is how you make a lot of these sales. So to lose out on dropped calls was an incredible negative impact to their bottom line. When ConnX worked with Juniper and we provided them with this SD-WAN solution, within a matter of months, they saw a 90% reduction in tickets, drastically reducing their costs. So, they saved in that first year over $30 million due to operational issues. And then not only that, they kind of countered that with 6 million plus increase in call retention. So that meant more increase in sales. So this is a great use case example of working with an MSP, figuring out where those issues might occur and using their experience to help fill those gaps, and really Juniper's AI-driven operations kind of helping with that. Go ahead and go to the next one. So this is a really great use case of implementing the Juniper full stack, but doing it in a way that you have to start somewhere, right? It's kind of a daunting task, and Seamus pointed this out, that there's a reluctancy to just go with one provider because of the challenges that it could occur, or maybe it's too complex, is what he was saying. So this is a great example. This was an international company, but really scale doesn't matter here, because I think this use case is very similar to many different organizations and businesses that they needed to start somewhere. So it was a bandwidth and latency issue that was occurring on their network. They were unhappy with their current provider, and they wanted to test it against somebody else. And they sent us a proof of concept to kind of go up against their incumbent. And they found that our tunnel-free technology with the Session Smart Router was saving them a tremendous amount of money. Right out the gate, it was a 30% cost savings for them. They were so impressed with that offering that they were curious about the rest of our stack. And this is where we got to show them the power of that full stack AI ops through the Mist cloud. They ended up purchasing the SD-WAN, the Mist APs, EX switches, and ran it all through one singular platform. So it's a great way to address a lot of common issues of latency and bandwidth, but ultimately saving costs at the end. So really powerful there. And then lastly, for this example, this is a regional bank in the Northwest. Oh, Seamus, yep, there we go. This is a regional bank in the Northeast, and I think it's a great example of what a SASE onboarding looks like. We see this common as well, that this might be a daunting task for many IT groups to address because they don't necessarily know where to start. And I think that looking at a bank, heightened security is top of mind, but I think nowadays security is top of mind for everybody. So it's not necessarily unique just to banks. So what they were experiencing was poor connectivity, and they needed heightened security to meet with these government expectations. And they wanted to compare Fortinet, Cato, and Juniper to see who could stack up the best. Ultimately, it was a cost savings. They worked with an MSP to make sure that they're filling all the gaps that they needed. And they went with Juniper SD-WAN because it was AI driven. It could address these issues as they were coming into their network and then remediate them immediately through our secure services edge. So this was kind of the first step towards their SASE. They're going to, by the end of this year, be a fully SASE ready company. And they're working with an MSP to get there. So we're happy to meet you where you are. And obviously we have the AI ops to back these things up. And go to the next slide, Seamus. I can talk about this all day, but you don't have to take my word for it. We fully embrace the third-party recognition. And as you can see here, Gartner as a full stack has given us the highest accolades as well. So we're very proud to be considered in all of these categories, let alone be leader in most. So as far as Juniper's product line is concerned, we're happy to provide insight work with partners, and ultimately get you to where you need to be. Yeah, through AI ops and addressing a lot of these issues that we're seeing common. So that wraps it for the Juniper portion. And I think, yeah, so the call to action here, if you had any questions about Juniper's products specifically, I would suggest going to juniper.net/SD-WAN. You can kind of dive in a little bit further, learn as much as you want. But if a conversation makes more sense too, I would direct you to ConnX, and they can really help kind of coach you through this process and really meet you where you are. So with that, thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Spencer and Seamus and Jeff, for all those great insights. Let's go ahead and jump into a couple questions before we wrap up today's event. Starting with you, Jeff, is there a low risk approach to getting started with an MSP, considering the complexity of operations and dependencies?
Yeah, thank you, Riley. Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think that, there's so much complexity. So, even before you even say, oh, I want to do SD-WAN or whatever, I think really the best way to engage with any MSP is really to ask for a assessment and really a gap analysis. And from there to understand what you have, what you need, and what does your journey look like. Some of our clients are very, very well versed and very ready to go, but don't realize that there's some pitfalls. So really, a assessment is a really low risk way of getting started by understanding the capabilities of your MSP, and your clients seek these assessments before deciding to implement the solutions, because then they have a really good roadmap of what to do, how much it's going to cost, and really it helps them also really define their goals so that they have a successful migration or a successful journey into managed SD-WAN. So I would say, really the best thing to do is to get started with a network assessment.
Great insights. Thank you, Jeff. Jumping over to you, Seamus, you mentioned that managed SD-WAN services can make the transition to SASE easier. What makes SASE so hard to adopt?
We find that a lot of enterprises are working with multiple vendors to put together a SASE solution, and that causes a lot of pain. For instance, trying to coordinate security architecture and security policy across the SD-WAN overlay and the SASE solution that's delivered via points of presence across the world can be difficult. Also, architecting the network can be a possible source of trouble. Like you are taking an existing SD-WAN solution, plugging it into a third-party secure service edge provider. You have to set up tunnels into that provider's points of presence in a way that optimizes the first and last mile. So like, are you connecting to the best POP, and is if not only to service that site that's connecting through the POP, but also is it optimized to get to its destination, like whatever application that or data that person in a site is trying to access. Can get pretty complex. There are other potential issues as well, but those are the two that first come to mind for me.
Yeah, and I think that, Seamus, when you talk about that, that really goes back to what you were saying, is like looking for MSPs that have that experience and really have that backbone of knowledge to be able to do that kind of work. Is not a simple thing by any means.
Yes.
Thank you both. Spencer, a question for you is, AI ops seems to be mentioned everywhere right now. Does Juniper use ChatGPT or other LLMs?
ChatGPT, it is all over the place. So we actually have, it's Marvis, it's our natural language chat bot. And we have recently just implemented ChatGPT into that. I think it's the 3.5 version. So it was already a pretty revolutionary chatbot that could really assess what's going on in your network. And, we always joke around internally about like, what's wrong with my video, and Wi-Fi sucks. And I mean, it's a natural language processor, so it will answer all of those questions already. But with the integration of ChatGPT, it'll now tell you through digested user manuals and kind of a little bit more granular detail as to where exactly how to remediate if there are issues that apply. So we're pretty excited about that. That was just released about a month ago at this point. So
Good to know. Thank you. Jeff, jumping back over to you, how can smaller companies enter the realm of edge computing and effectively address remote work challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very interesting. I know that a lot of what we talk about, a lot of people think of SD-WAN and now SASE, as things move to the cloud, as being, oh, that's for enterprise clients. But as more and more remote work and more work from home happens, we're seeing a lot more small, medium businesses really reach for these things. Particularly any client that has branches or remote workers at this point. Borderless enterprises and work from anywhere really challenges are hard for smaller companies. Unified management and full stack observability become really key to this. And so when you talk about smaller companies, you're looking for an MSP that can provide this to you on an OpEx basis, without the overhead. Right, so you don't have to invest in whether it's human capital or hardware capital to get started. You want to be able to kind of take the easy road in to say, okay, I have these needs. Can you provide this to me as a platform? Can you really provide it to me as an entire package? I don't want to think about it. I just want to consume it on a monthly basis, and you tell me that everything's working right and that it's reliable. I don't have to think about it. I can look at the reports. I can self-service if necessary, but it's all packaged together for me without having to really worry about it. And I think that that's a huge value for any small business looking to kind of get into this edge computing and really, spread their wings and put their network out into the world beyond their home office.
And Jeff, can you also discuss which clients or environments are expected to benefit the most from the implementation of managed SD-WAN in 2023?
Ooh, I know that we've seen a lot of interest from multiple places. Obviously, the enterprise clients have already really been full on force into these. I think that any industry that sees a lot of fragmentation of tools and growth in technology that are also really adhering to stringent compliance requirements really find that is important from them. So, when you talk about healthcare or federal and SLED, right? And it doesn't necessarily need to be an enterprise client, even smaller clients that deal with healthcare and Fed SLED. But even clients that are very interested in this from a manufacturing and IoT level, and even at retail, you have regulated industries in retail in terms of having to deal with credit card payments. You have manufacturing and IoT that has security concerns that benefit from this, SD-WAN. You have the need to project your presence outside of your home network, but you have to worry about the security of what you're doing. And again, that you're really looking at any kind of those regulated industries is really what we have found a lot of clients and environments really needing this kind of help.
Thank you, Jeff. And wrapping up with you, Spencer, where can people find more information on Juniper's approach to AI ops?
So our website it's very robust. It's got a lot of information there. I think the fastest way to get up to speed on that is go straight to this link, juniper.net/SD-WAN. We've got a number of videos that we've just released recently that dive further into AI ops. I wanted to note too, the journey to SASE as well. Both Seamus and Jeff kind of talked about that. The beauty of Juniper's approach is we're going to meet you where you are. And we talked about filling a lot of these gaps that can be within your network, and maybe a little bit of a daunting task to get there. But our product can bolt on wherever necessary. So if you've leveraged investments already, and maybe those are long-term commitments, we can fill the gaps until you're ready to come as a single solution. And I would just point you straight to the ConnX team, Jeff as well, to start having those conversations, because this is where things are heading these days. And AI ops is a part of that conversation too. So
thank you, Spencer, Seamus, and Jeff, for all your insights today. And I wanted to thank our audience for taking time out of your schedule to join us. As I mentioned, you will be receiving a follow-up email with resources from today's webinar. So I hope you'll check that email out. And I hope we'll see you at a future EMA Research webinar. Thank you again for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for having us, Raleigh.
yeah, thanks, Raleigh. Thanks, gang. Bye.